You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Hey, man, what's the vibe in Lake Charles right now with the Cowboys coming over to Baton Rouge, a game that was supposed to happen in 2015 and didn't because of lightning?
I think believe it or not, obviously these types of money games, which is what they are from the start, it's always kind of a weird feeling. But I think with all of the ties between the two schools, it kind of helped erase a not very good week one. They didn't play very well last week, and they're obviously super upset. I mean, they lost to a Division II school despite them being number one. But this week, it's kind of, I think, helped rejuvenize a little bit. There's some rejuvenation definitely being felt. So I think that the vibe, believe it or not, I think it ends up being a really good time for them to kind of have this game here. They're not necessarily expected to win, obviously. So it kind of helps ease the pressure, and I think they're in a good place mentally because of it.
A lot of fans going to make the trip?
I would imagine so. They typically travel pretty well, and there's a lot of crossover between LSU and McNeese fans already, as there are every FCS LSU team. So I think I think they'll travel pretty well overall, if I had to guess.
Let's talk about the team a little bit. I mean, there's two storylines I think that everybody around here knows, and we've talked about a ton, which are Frank Wilson and Cody Orgeron. So let's start with the head coach and Frank Wilson. Obviously, they had the weird year in the spring season last year, but how would you assess Frank Wilson's time at McNeese so far?
I think right now it's a lot of expectation and then not a lot delivered yet, although I don't necessarily feel like that's can be faulted. I mean, he's coached in just a handful of games up to this point, so it's not really fair to assess his tenure yet. However, I think the expectations are high. I mean, when you come in and you bring in double-digit starters from the Division I level, all the transfers, you kind of build up this team and what they can do. I think that there's a lot of people waiting to see what ultimately happens this year because, last year they didn't have the offensive lineman. They were starting quarterback at running back for one of the games. There were a lot of issues of it's like, well, let the Cavalry get here. Let the Cavalry get here. Now everything's here. And we've just kind of got to see how it ultimately plays out. I think so far, though, he's a recruiter, and that's really what his strength is. And I think that we've seen that thus far. And so I think everything is to be told up to this point. But I think most people are satisfied with what he's done because this team doesn't look like a standard McNeese team when they strap on the pads. They'll just need to kind of back it up on the fields on Saturdays, and we'll see how what it looks like when they start facing their conference opponents and FCS teams in the future.
Brady mentioned all the transfers. What are some of the names that people may recognize or names people should know for Saturday?
Yeah, obviously in the New Orleans area, you got a guy like Corian Harris. He was at Kansas with Les Miles, transferred over. He's the starting slot corner there. Chris Joyce, the boundary corner for him. He's a Tulane transfer wearing number 5. Another number 5 on offense is another Tulane transfer, Stephon Hutterson. He started for them last year, led them in rushing, believe it or not. Tulane did. So they took Tulane's leading rusher, and he led the team in rushing this past week. Jamal Pettigrew, the tight end.
Oh, sure.
And what he does, their left tackle, they won't know it, but Romello Tarver from Central Michigan, their right guard who was supposed to play last week, didn't, is another transfer they used from Iowa and Winters. Isaiah Chambers, everyone knows him, FCS player, or one of the close FCS players of the year, All-American, and Isaiah Chambers at defensive end there. So obviously a lot of high-end transfers coming in, and then both their starting receivers are both Louisiana Tech guys. So a lot of names and a lot of guys that have had mileage elsewhere have come and tried to finish their career out with McNeese, which, like I said, kind of leans on the expectations of this football program.
Brady Renard is with us, KPLC in Lake Charles. Now, the other one that we obviously have to talk about, of course, is Cody Orgeron, and that's the storyline a lot of people here are going to be talking about this week. How is that, or is that playing there this week with Cody and Ed going head-to-head?
Obviously they changed up the way that they do media because of it this week, and they allowed Cody to talk on Monday, which is not something that they typically do. So they've embraced it. I mean, I think you couldn't do anything but do that when your starting quarterback is matching up with the head coach. Trying to find, like in history when it's happened, it's kind of tough. I think the last time may have been the Elways Jack and John Elway there with San Jose and Stanford. So it's not something that's common in college football. And so I think they're having fun with it. I think they kind of realize that all it does is take away pressure from what Saturday is. And I think anytime a staff can do that in a football team, they're going to lean on it. And especially these two teams are so connected, as you mentioned. You mentioned Frank and Cody. You've also got guys like Josh Matthews, the wide receiver. His dad played at LSU, linebacker Rashawn Matthews. Chris Raymond, the son of Corey Raymond's on the coaching staff. Chris Truex played at LSU. He now is a coach at McNeese, and his son is actually what the coach's locker room there is named after. You've got guys like Blaine Goche, who coached at LSU. Danny Cameron, the son of Cam Cameron, is on the staff as well.
Wow.
Jamal Pettigrew, an LSU transfer. A lot of guys that have LSU ties, whether their fathers were there or themselves. And so there's a lot of kind of homecoming-esque this week for this football team.
But there are a ton of ties there. That is going to be interesting. Let's talk about specifically on the field for a second. What happened last week in that loss to Southwest Florida?
It's such a weird game. If you look at the box score, you can't figure it out. And I had to kind of even dive a little deeper into it to really get a feel of it. How about this? McNeese ran 25 more plays. They had 13 more minutes of possession. They gained more yards. They led the turnover battle. They led the first downs, and yet they still lost the game. And I think it really comes down to the fact that their defense could not stop the big plays. 17 plays or 10 or more yards, 13 of 15 or more yards, and 8 plays of 20 or more yards. They would get them down into third and longs, and they would convert. Look, credit North Florida and West Florida, rather, in the way that they played. They didn't play like a scared Division II school going into a bigger school. It was third down, back into their own end zone, and they're throwing intermediate passes over the middle, deep post. They're just not scared, and I think that kind of benefited them in the long run. So that's going to be something they need to get cleaned up. They lost a lot of one-on-one boundary matchups on the boundary, and that was really the biggest thing. And I think the stat that kind of sticks out the most, they had 0 sacks. With this defensive line that was hyped up for being really the best that McNeese has maybe had in a while, led by Isaiah Chambers, to not get consistent pressure and not have a sack is really an issue. But there's a lot of the same things that you can say about the way LSU played last week and the way McNeese played, and there's a lot of similarities between the two.
Sure. So what's obviously
and look,
yeah.
and I don't mean to interrupt again. I think something, too, I didn't mention there, their kicking game is in shambles. They missed 4 kicks last week, 3 of them extra points. They ended up just going for 2 at the end of the game, despite it not being a good reason to go for 2 in terms of the situation. So that's something that's ongoing, too. They're having a walk-on kicker try out for them this week. And so that's something to kind of look forward to this week as well.
Sure. No, it's a great tidbit. Before you go, the issue is very likely not going to be in doubt in this game. But what is Frank Wilson and the staff hoping to accomplish this weekend? You don't want to say moral victories, but I think you understand what I'm asking.
Yeah, for sure. And, he had mentioned the last time with a smile, he was on the LSU staff when they met in 2015. And he said, last time we were here, we left Tiger Stadium with the lead, at least in terms of yardage. And so I think that's kind of the goal. If I had to guess, I think that there would be a lot of content McNeese coaches, if I can even say that. You know what I mean? In terms of if they can give LSU a little bit of a sweat. Think, I guess, of Northwestern in the 2019 season, where NSU was leading in the second quarter, and kind of people are looking at it that way. I think that would be the biggest thing. If McNeese comes out, maybe grabs an early 7-0 lead, 3-0 lead. It's a 1-2 possession game at the half where, all of a sudden the SEC network's focusing, upset brewing in Tiger Stadium. I think if you can get to that level of confidence for McNeese this week, I think that they would feel pretty good about it overall because, as we mentioned, they're not going into Tiger Stadium knowing that they're going to win this ball game.
He is Brady Renard. He's on Twitter at Renard Sports, KPLC television there in Lake Charles, covers the McNeese State Cowboys. Tigers and Cowboys Saturday in Tiger Stadium. Hey, man, always glad to catch up. I'm glad it's football season, certainly, and we appreciate the time. We'll do it again soon.
Always. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.